And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Saturday morning's flying weather showing the next front pushing a band of IFR out over the western Bering Sea and in over Adak, Alaska. But to the east, VFR, eastern Bering Sea, here from Unalaska Island right on up into the Chukchi Sea, western Arctic coast. IFR over the eastern interior here, and then marginal VFR areas of the Copper River Basin. A little bit of marginal VFR, Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet. IFR in the northern panhandle, marginal VFR on down to the south. And for the afternoon, some VFR over the inside water, especially central and southern southeast coast down to Dixon Entrance, with the lower conditions diminishing but holding over northern Lynn Canal area. Marginal VFR for the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound. And IFR here along the eastern part of the state, actually north from the Alaska Range northward there to the eastern Arctic coast. Then good VFR central western interior right on out into the northern and eastern Bering Sea with, again, that frontal system here and a band of IFR from the central Aleutians northwestward. And then for Sunday morning, that system weakens, but still an area of marginal VFR here. St. Matthew Island, Pribilofs down to the eastern Aleutians, but breaking out to VFR, Atka, Adak, all the way back to Kiska Island. Marginal VFR here, Kenai Peninsula, or southern Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, as well as the Gulf of Alaska here. Improving conditions on the east side, but still a little on the low side there in the morning with possible IFR, extreme eastern Alaska Range there along and north of the eastern Alaska Range. Areas of marginal VFR for the southeast coast. And for this afternoon, areas of VFR for the panhandle, but marginal VFR along the coastal zone. And for the North Gulf Coast, areas of marginal VFR again into Prince William Sound. Southern Kenai Peninsula, IFR up here developing over the eastern interior there, kind of along and south of the Yukon River, and then on down in toward Tok and Northway. And then a stronger system out here with a lot of marginal VFR from the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. IFR over the northeastern Bering Sea. Pribilofs almost up to Nunivak Island there. And then a narrow band along the Alaska Peninsula. And then for passes for tomorrow, marginal VFR for both Anaktuvik and Anigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR. Good VFR for rainy and windy as well. And then conditions lower as you head east. Go marginal VFR for Isabel and IFR from Antasta, then bring it back up to marginal VFR for Tanita. Portage, starting out marginal, becoming VFR, so looking pretty good there for most of the day for Portage on Saturday. And Chilkoot and White passes, lingering IFR, could see some improvement later in the afternoon, early evening, but generally IFR. For the freezing levels here, 2,000 feet along the central and south coast of the Panhandle, as well as in the Gulf of Alaska, and 2,000 feet up to about Adak there with some southerly flow ahead of that next front. And for icing, areas of possible isolated moderate rime icing here, eastern Aleutians with that system up to the northwest, wrapping back in around the western Aleutians there from Amchitka to Shimia. And also some possible icing up here over the eastern and northern and northeastern interior areas, eastern Arctic coast, right on down in toward the mountains north of the Tanana Valley there. And for the North Gulf Coast, possible icing there as well as over the southern southeast coast. And for the jet stream, kind of two bands of winds for the at 33,000 feet here. Westerlies to the north there, coming into the northwest interior at about 65 knots. And then another band here kind of arcing over the southeast Bering Sea. Southerlies 95 knots there, and then northwest at 95 knots. And at 9,000 feet, head of that front, or along the front there, we've got southeast winds here, 35 to 60 knots there for the eastern Bering Sea, and then west 40 behind the front there for the western Aleutians. High pressure here near Norton Sound, westerlies at about 50 knots, north side of that ridge, and then becoming lighter and more northerly there to the east. Pretty light winds here over the eastern interior into the Gulf of Alaska, including the southeast coast. And again, 3,000 feet showing a weak low in the Gulf of Alaska there for light wind conditions for the southeast coast. all of the eastern and northern interior of the state with some high pressure there near the Brooks Range. And then the front out here over the Bering Sea, pretty evident there with the winds along in advance of that, and the narrow band anywhere from 50 to 60 knots or 50 to 65 knots there. And then we've got these easterlies here over the southwest interior up to 40 knots. And with that, we'll throw some light to isolated moderate turbulence there in for the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta into the Kuskokwim Mountains there, on out to St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew Island. Heavier turbulence pretty likely here ahead of that front for the eastern Aleutians there. Look for considerable moderate turbulence there. Otherwise, for the Matanuska Valley, could be some light to isolated moderate turbulence, surface to 3,000 feet during the day tomorrow.